Jake sat at his desk, his fingers clicking away at the keyboard, working late into the night. The office was quiet, the usual hum of voices replaced by the soft buzz of the fluorescent lights overhead. The lab was empty now, the other scientists long gone. He had always been a late-night worker, preferring the stillness of the evening to the noise of the day. But tonight, something felt off. A strange chill ran down his spine, as if he was being watched. He glanced around, but the room was empty. His eyes returned to his screen, but the feeling didn't fade. It was as if someone or something was standing just outside his vision, waiting for the perfect moment to step into the light. Jake shook his head, trying to focus on his work. He needed to finish the report by morning. But the chill in the air wouldn't go away. It only grew stronger, until it felt like the very air around him was thick with anticipation. Without warning, the lights flickered. It was a brief moment, but enough to make Jake's heart race. His fingers froze over the keyboard. His eyes darted to the doorway, but there was no one there. The quietness of the lab now felt unnerving. His mind raced, trying to make sense of what was happening. Then, the scent hit him. It was subtle at first, like a whisper on the wind. But it was there, unmistakable. The faint smell of something sweet, something floral, but also wild, like the scent of a forest after a rainstorm. It made Jake's head spin, his senses suddenly overloaded. He sniffed the air, trying to place the smell, but it didn't belong here. The lab was sterile, filled with the sharp scent of chemicals and metal. This wasn't supposed to be here. He stood up, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. He turned in a circle, his eyes scanning the room, but there was nothing. Just the same empty lab. The scent, though, was growing stronger. It seemed to follow him, clinging to the air around him like a shadow. He felt dizzy, his mind struggling to make sense of what was happening. And then, he saw her. At first, she was nothing more than a blur in the corner of his eye. A fleeting figure that seemed to shimmer in the shadows. Jake blinked, and she was gone. For a moment, he thought he had imagined it. But then, the scent was there again, stronger than ever, and this time, he could feel her presence. She was standing in the doorway, watching him. Her eyes glowing faintly in the dim light, locked onto his with an intensity that sent a shiver through his spine. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came. She was tall, her features sharp and alien, but there was something about her that felt familiar. As if she didn't belong here, yet somehow she did. The woman took a step forward, her movement graceful and smooth, like she was gliding. "You," she said, her voice soft but firm, "are mine." Jake took a step back, his heart pounding. What do you mean?" Her lips curved into a slight smile, a smile that sent a strange wave of heat rushing through his body. "You don't understand yet, but you will." She stepped closer, her presence overwhelming. The scent clung to her, more powerful now, filling the entire space around them. "You are marked. No one else can touch you now. You belong to me." Jake's mind raced. What was she talking about? He tried to speak, but his throat felt dry. He felt trapped, the words unable to form in his mouth. The air between them seemed to hum with energy, as if the very room had become charged with something beyond his understanding. The woman reached out, her hand hovering just in front of him. "This mark," she said, her fingers brushing lightly against his skin, "is not just a symbol. It is a bond, a connection. You are mine now." Jake felt a sharp jolt of energy race through him, like electricity running through his veins. His body tensed, and for a moment, he felt as though his very soul was being pulled towards her. He gasped, stumbling backward, his mind struggling to comprehend what was happening. But before he could react, she was gone, vanishing into the shadows just as quietly as she had appeared. The scent lingered in the air for a few moments longer, but then, just as quickly, it faded. Jake stood there, frozen, unable to move. He looked around the lab, his heart still racing. But there was no sign of her. Only the quiet hum of the lights and the distant sound of the night. Jake's hand went to his neck, his fingers brushing against his skin. It felt different. He didn't know why, but it was as if something had changed inside him. The mark, her words echoed in his mind. You belong to me. He wasn't sure what had just happened. But one thing was clear. His life would never be the same again. The next morning, Jake woke up feeling strange, as though he hadn't truly slept at all. His body ached, and his mind was clouded. He sat up in bed, rubbing his eyes, trying to shake off the lingering fog. But something was different. Something was wrong. As he swung his legs off the bed and stood up, a strange feeling washed over him. It was as if he wasn't alone, even though he clearly was. His senses felt heightened, more aware of the world around him than usual. The air in his apartment felt thick, heavy with the scent of something floral, like the fragrance of roses mixed with the wildness of the forest. The smell was familiar. It was the same one he had noticed the night before. His heart skipped a beat. Could it really be the same? He couldn't stop thinking about the woman, the mysterious figure who had appeared in the lab. Her words echoed in his mind. You are marked. You belong to me. Jake shook his head, trying to focus. Maybe he was just tired, or maybe it was just a dream. But deep down, he knew that wasn't the case. Something had changed, something he couldn't explain. The moment he stepped into the shower, he felt it again, an odd, almost magnetic pull at the back of his mind. Like he was being drawn towards something. He finished his morning routine in a daze, but as he left his apartment to head to work, something strange happened. The world outside seemed quieter than usual. The streets, typically bustling with the noise of traffic and pedestrians, felt oddly hushed. He walked through the city, the scent of flowers still lingering in the air, following him like an invisible trail. When he arrived at the lab, the sensation only grew stronger. As he walked into the building, his colleagues greeted him with strange looks, their faces a mix of curiosity and apprehension. He didn't know what to make of it. Was it his imagination? The workday dragged on, the hours stretching longer than usual. Every time he glanced around, he noticed people looking at him, their gazes lingering longer than they should. He felt the weight of their attention, as if they could sense something he didn't understand. It was unsettling. Then, just before lunch, he saw her again. This time, there was no mistaking it. Lyra was standing at the end of the hallway, leaning casually against the wall, as though she'd been waiting for him. She wore the same glowing, almost ethereal presence about her, but this time, Jake could see the dangerous confidence in her eyes. She was no longer just a strange figure. She was real, and she was here. She smiled when she saw him, a knowing smile that sent a shiver down his spine. Jake, she said, her voice like honey, smooth and seductive. We need to talk. Jake's mouth went dry. He couldn't find the words to respond. He wanted to ask her what was going on, what this was all about, but his body seemed frozen, unable to move. Lyra stepped forward, her eyes never leaving his. You're feeling it now, aren't you? She moved closer, her presence overwhelming. The bond is stronger than before. You can't ignore it. You can't escape it. Jake tried to step back, but his legs wouldn't cooperate. What do you want from me? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. She reached out and placed her hand gently on his chest, just above his heart. I want you, Jake. You've been marked, and now you're mine. The touch sent a jolt of electricity through his body, leaving him breathless. He could feel his pulse quicken, his heart hammering in his chest. It wasn't just a physical reaction. It was as though something deep inside him was stirring something primal and powerful, and it was tied to her. Why me? He asked, struggling to find his voice again. Why are you doing this? Lyra's smile widened. You don't have to understand yet, but you will. The mark I gave you, it's not just a symbol, it's a connection. And now, you are mine in ways you can't even imagine. Jake took a deep breath, trying to push back the confusion and fear that threatened to overwhelm him. "No one owns me," he said, his voice more steady now, though he didn't believe his own words. Lyra laughed softly, a sound that seemed to echo in the empty hallway. "You will learn, Jake. No one else can touch you now. Not unless I allow it." She turned and walked away, her movements graceful, leaving Jake standing there, frozen in place. The scent of flowers lingered in the air, and he could feel the weight of her words pressing down on him. His mind raced. What did she mean by "no one else can touch you"? Was she talking about the mark? Was it some kind of alien ritual? And why was she choosing him? Jake's world had already been turned upside down, and as the day wore on, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. Something much bigger was happening, something that he had no control over. The question was, how far would it go? And what was he supposed to do about it? Jake woke up the next morning with a strange, gnawing feeling in his chest, as though he had forgotten something important. His head was heavy, his thoughts sluggish, and the scent of flowers, the same scent from yesterday, seemed to linger. In the corners of his apartment, clinging to the air like a memory. He couldn't explain it, but every part of his body felt different. Stronger, maybe, but also somehow more vulnerable. The mark. He had to be imagining it, but the moment he closed his eyes, he could feel it, a faint heat under his skin. Like a brand dot as Jake moved through his morning routine, he tried to push away the lingering unease. He had to go to work. He had a deadline, a report to finish. But as he stepped out of his apartment, the city felt off. It was quiet, too quiet. The usual hustle of traffic and busy pedestrians was muted, and every passing person seemed to glance at him a little too long. It wasn't just his imagination. By the time he reached the lab, the sense of being watched had grown even stronger. He walked through the sterile halls, trying to focus, but it was as though every step he took was being followed. Every glance from his colleagues laced with unspoken questions. They hadn't acted like this before. Jake tried to brush it off, but when he entered his lab, a new feeling washed over him, a tingling sensation, like an electric current running through his veins. He froze. The air around him seemed to shift, growing thick and heavy. The temperature dropped slightly, and his breath formed a mist in front of him. Something wasn't right. Then he saw it. The mark on his neck, faint but unmistakable, had changed. The skin there was warm to the touch, and for the first time, he saw a faint glow emanating from it. His pulse quickened as the memory of Lyra's words flooded back into his mind. "You belong to me." As the glow intensified, he instinctively reached up to touch it. His fingers brushed the area where the mark was, and the sudden surge of power was enough to make him stumble back. His entire body felt alive with energy, as if every nerve had been jolted awake. That's when the door to the lab swung open. "Jake!" It was his colleague, Ben. "You okay? You look pale." Jake quickly pulled his hand away from his neck, trying to shake off the strange sensation. "I'm fine," he said, forcing a smile. But inside, he was anything but fine. Something about the mark, about the connection he now had with Lyra, felt so much stronger, so much more powerful than before. Ben stepped closer, his eyes narrowing. "What's wrong? You don't look right. Did you sleep?" Jake tried to brush it off, but there was a weird energy in the air, something that was making him feel off. It was as if Ben and everyone else in the lab could sense the change in him, could sense that he wasn't the same. "Yeah, I'm fine," Jake repeated, his voice more forceful this time. "Just tired, I guess." But Ben didn't look convinced. He gave Jake a concerned look before turning to leave. "All right, if you say so. But if you're not feeling well, just let me know." As Ben walked away, Jake exhaled sharply, trying to regain his composure. His hands were shaking slightly, but he couldn't tell if it was from the strange power surging through him or the fear of what was happening. The mark on his neck burned faintly, and for a split second, he felt the pull of it. drawing him to something or someone he couldn't yet understand. That was when it happened. The lights in the lab flickered, and the air grew cold again. The faint smell of flowers returned, and Jake knew immediately that she was near. He looked up, and there she was, Lyra, standing in the doorway, watching him with those glowing eyes. "Lyra," Jake whispered, his voice barely audible. He didn't know what else to say. Part of him wanted to demand answers, to ask why this was happening to him, but the power within him was growing, and it was hard to focus with the overwhelming pull of her presence. "You feel it, don't you?" Lyra asked, her voice soft, almost like a caress. "The mark is growing stronger. It's not just a symbol anymore, Jake. It's a part of you, a part of your very being." Jake's heart raced as the sensation grew more intense. His body felt like it was vibrating with power, and the mark on his neck glowed even brighter. He took a step back, but Lyra followed, moving with a grace that made her seem almost otherworldly. "You've been chosen," she continued, her voice a soft command. "And now no one can touch you, not unless I allow it." Jake's breath caught in his throat. He wasn't sure if he was afraid or excited by the way his body was responding to her words, to the power she had awakened within him. But something inside him told him he couldn't fight it. He had already been marked, and now he was bound to her in ways that went beyond his understanding. The room seemed to close in around him, the walls feeling like they were pressing inward, but Lyra was still there, standing before him, as if the world itself had bent to her will. "This power," Lyra said, her voice taking on an almost hypnotic tone, "it's more than you think. And now you will never be the same. You belong to me, Jake, and no one else can have you." Jake tried to move, tried to think clearly, but the mark, the power inside him, was all-consuming. His body responded to her words, to her presence, and his mind struggled to keep up with the overwhelming sensation. Lyra's smile was faint, but knowing. This is just the beginning. Jake spent the next few days in a daze, unable to focus on anything for more than a few minutes. The mark on his neck burned constantly, its power growing stronger with each passing hour. The connection to Lyra was undeniable, and with it came a strange pull, a sensation that he was being hunted. But who or what was hunting him? And why? Every time he stepped outside, he could feel eyes on him. There was an eerie stillness to the world around him, as if something was waiting to strike. The scent of flowers followed him, and the sensation of being watched never left. It was like the world itself had changed, like he was the center of something far bigger than himself. At the lab, things had grown more tense. People whispered behind his back, giving him strange glances. Jake couldn't tell if it was the mark or something else, but it was like the atmosphere around him had shifted. He could feel the tension, the suspicion in the air. His colleagues were avoiding him, speaking in hushed voices whenever he passed by. One day, as he entered the building, he was greeted by a sudden, sharp chill in the air, even though it was a warm day outside. The smell of flowers thickened, and his pulse quickened. It wasn't just a passing sensation this time. He could feel it in his bones. Something was approaching. Someone was coming for him. Then just as he stepped into the hallway, he saw it. A dark figure emerged from the shadows, moving with purpose, but silently, like a predator stalking its prey. Jake's heart skipped a beat as he tried to make out the figure's shape. It was taller than any human. The air around it seemed to shimmer, distorting like heat rising off the pavement. But it wasn't heat. It was something else. Before he could react, the figure stepped closer, and Jake froze, his legs unwilling to move. The figure was unmistakably alien, its skin dark and smooth like polished stone. Its eyes, glowing a bright amber, locked onto his with a predatory intensity. Jake could feel the power of the mark on his neck pulse violently, as though it recognized this alien being. The connection, the bond, was suddenly alive in a way it hadn't been before. It screamed at him to run, but he couldn't. His legs wouldn't obey. The alien's eyes bore into him, cold and calculating. He realized then that this wasn't just a random encounter. This was the beginning of something. Jake. The alien hissed, its voice a low, guttural sound that reverberated in his chest. It took a step forward, and Jake instinctively took a step back, but the figure didn't. Stop. It spoke again, this time with more authority, its voice heavy with menace. You belong to her now. Jake's breath hitched. He knew immediately what it meant. This was one of Lyra's enemies. One of the beings who was after him. Double quotes. Why? Why are you here? Jake managed to ask, his voice trembling despite his best effort to sound calm. The alien's lips curled into a twisted smile. You think the mark means nothing? You think you're safe with her? She has made a mistake. You are not hers to control. Jake felt a surge of anger, but before he could respond, a voice interrupted him, a voice that made his heart skip. Enough. Lyra appeared, stepping out from behind the alien with an air of undeniable authority. Her presence was like a storm breaking through a quiet sky. She was calm, but there was power in every movement she made. The alien stepped back, its expression a mixture of fear and defiance. You have no claim on him. He belongs to no one. Lyra's eyes flashed, glowing with an intensity that Jake had never seen before. You're mistaken. He is marked. And that mark is a bond that cannot be broken. Not by you, or anyone else. The alien's face twisted in disgust, but it did not challenge Lyra further. It seemed to know better than to push her. Instead, it shot Jake a final venomous glare before it turned and disappeared into the shadows, melting away into the air as if it had never been there. Jake stood frozen, his mind racing. What had just happened? Who were these beings? And why? Did the power of the mark feel so dangerous? Lyra stepped closer to him, her eyes softening, though there was still a coldness to them. You are safe for now, she said, her voice calm but firm. But they will keep coming. There are others like him, beings who want what I have claimed. Jake shook his head, trying to make sense of the chaos around him. What is this? Why are they after me? Lyra's gaze lingered on him, and for a moment, she seemed to hesitate. It's not just about you, Jake. You are more than just a possession. You're a key, something far more valuable than you realize. And the moment I marked you, I became your protector. But I am not the only one who wants you. Jake swallowed hard, the weight of her words sinking in. He was caught in something bigger than himself, something that reached far beyond his understanding. And the truth was, he wasn't sure if he was ready for it. But there was one thing he did know. He wasn't going to survive this alone. Asterisk. Jake couldn't sleep that night. The events of the day, the alien, the mark, and Lyra's cryptic warnings swirled in his mind like a storm. He tossed and turned in bed, unable to shake the feeling that his life had been turned upside down. That something had changed within him in a way he could no longer control. The mark on his neck still pulsed, its heat radiating from under his skin. It had stopped glowing, but the sensation hadn't faded. It was like an invisible tether, tying him to something far bigger than himself, to Lyra. And then, there was the matter of the alien. The one who had warned him that he didn't belong. To Lyra, that he was more than just a possession. What did that mean? What was so special about him? He had never felt like anyone of importance, just an average guy doing his job. But now, everything was different. He wasn't just an ordinary human anymore. It was then that the door to his apartment creaked open. Lyra. She stood there, bathed in the soft light from the hallway. Her eyes locked onto his immediately, glowing faintly in the darkness. She didn't need to say anything for Jake to feel the weight of her presence. It was as if the very air shifted when she entered, an undeniable aura of power that pressed down on him. Lyra, he said, sitting up, his voice rough from a night of restless thinking. I don't understand. What's going on? Why me? Why this mark? She stepped inside without a word, her movements smooth and graceful. She walked over to him, her gaze unwavering, and for the first time, Jake saw something flicker in her eyes, something not quite cold, but not quite warm either. She was always calm, always in control. But tonight, there was an intensity to her that was almost human. You're not just a random human, Lyra said, her voice steady. The moment I marked you, I knew you would be important. More important than you realize, Jake frowned, his confusion deepening. But why? I'm just a scientist. A nobody. Lyra shook her head slowly, her eyes never leaving his. You are not a nobody, Jake. You were chosen. By fate, by forces you cannot yet understand. Chosen for what? His voice broke the silence, trembling slightly. What do you mean, chosen? And who were those people, the one who came for me? Lyra let out a small sigh, her eyes softening as if she had been waiting for this moment. I was hoping you wouldn't ask, she whispered, almost to herself. But you deserve to know the truth. She took a seat across from him, her eyes never leaving him as she began to speak. You see, Jake, my people, my race are ancient. We have lived for eons, and during that time, we have made many enemies. Enemies who want to use our powers for their own gain. They have been hunting us, seeking out any way to control us. Jake swallowed, trying to process the enormity of her words. And I'm involved in all of this, because of the mark? Lyra nodded, her gaze unblinking. Yes, the mark is more than a symbol of possession, as you believe. It's a bond, a key to unlocking something far more powerful than either of us can imagine. You are not just marked by me, Jake, you are marked by the universe itself. He stared at her, his heart racing. What does that mean? What do you mean, marked by the universe? She leaned forward slightly, her voice lowering. Your bloodline, Jake, it's ancient, just like mine. You are not the human you think you are. Your ancestors were part of a race that helped create the first alliance between humans and my people. That's why they're after you. Because you carry the blood of both worlds. The moment I marked you, I awoke something inside of you, something that binds you to me and to my people. You are more important than you realize. Jake felt a sudden rush of heat in his chest, as though her words had unlocked something deep within him. His mind raced, trying to wrap itself around the idea that his family, his bloodline, had a connection to these aliens. But how? He was just a normal guy, at least. He thought he was. He had no memory of any ancient bloodline. Number 1 did. You're saying I have alien blood? He asked, incredulous. How is that even possible? Lyra's expression remained calm, but there was something almost sad in her eyes now. The blood of our ancestors is buried deep within your genetics, Jake. It's something hidden, waiting to be awakened. And now it has been. The mark I gave you is just the beginning of what you will become. You are no longer just human. You're something more. Jake shook his head, his mind reeling. He didn't know whether to be terrified or amazed. Everything he thought he knew about his life, about himself, was unraveling before his eyes. And those creatures who attacked me, they knew about this, didn't they? Jake asked, his voice barely above a whisper. They were after me because of what I am now, because of the power inside me. Lyra nodded. Yes, they are part of a faction that seeks to control the key to my people's power, and you are that key. The moment they realized what you were, they came for you. They won't stop. Jake stood up abruptly, pacing the room. So what now? What do I do with this power? What do you want from me? Lyra's voice was calm, but it carried the weight of centuries. You are not just a weapon, Jake. You are a protector. You are the one who can restore balance between our worlds. The only question is whether you'll embrace your destiny. Jake stopped pacing, his heart hammering. Destiny. So this isn't a choice? I don't get a say in this? Lyra stood and walked over to him, her presence overwhelming. "You do, Jake. But you must understand what you are is not something you can escape. It is who you are. And now you must decide whether you will use this power for what is right, or let it destroy you." Jake's eyes met hers, and for the first time he understood. This wasn't just about him anymore. This was bigger than anything he had ever imagined. And the truth, the real truth, was only beginning to unfold. The weight of the truth settled heavily on Jake's chest. He sat in his apartment that night, staring at his reflection in the dark window. He could see the faint glow of the mark on his neck in the dim light, still pulsating with an energy he couldn't control. It was as if his very body had become a battleground, a place where his human side fought against this newfound, alien part of him. The world outside seemed so normal, so unchanged. But inside, everything felt different. He had never imagined that his life could be altered in such a profound way. The truth about his bloodline, about his connection to Lyra and her people, felt unreal. Yet, the mark on his skin, the power that surged through him, told him otherwise. Jake stood up from the couch and paced the room, trying to make sense of the storm inside him. He didn't feel like the same person. He wasn't sure who he was anymore. A sharp knock on the door broke his thoughts. His heart skipped, and for a moment, he considered pretending he wasn't home. But the knock came again, this time more insistent. He walked to the door, his hand trembling slightly as he reached for the handle. When he opened it, there was no one there, just a small metallic object sitting on the floor. It glowed faintly, casting an eerie light in the hallway. Jake bent down and picked it up carefully. It was a strange, circular device, smooth and cold to the touch. No markings, no insignia. Just that faint, unsettling glow. A voice suddenly echoed in his head, Lyra's voice. "Jake, don't touch it." He froze, his fingers still wrapped around the device. The warning in her voice was enough to send a chill down his spine. He dropped it immediately, but the object didn't fall. It hovered just above the floor, as if suspended by some invisible force. Then, in a burst of light, it shot up into the air and disappeared through the ceiling, leaving only a faint trail of energy. In its wake, Jake's breath caught in his throat. What had just happened? Before he could process the event, Lyra appeared in the doorway, stepping into the apartment with that same air of calm authority. She didn't seem surprised by the strange occurrence, but her expression was serious. "That was a message," she said, her voice low and steady. "They're getting closer. They know you're awakening." Jake's mind raced. Who's getting closer? Lyra looked at him with an intensity that made him feel small. The faction. Who wants to control you? They've sensed the change in you. They're going to try to manipulate your power, to use you for their own gain. And you, Jake, you're at a crossroads. Jake swallowed, trying to keep his voice steady. "What do you mean, a crossroads?" She stepped closer, her gaze never leaving his. "The mark has awakened something inside of you. Your bloodline is ancient, and it holds power. More power than you know. But now you must decide how to wield it. Will you use this power to protect yourself, to protect the ones you care about? Or will you allow others to control you, to twist you into a weapon for their war?" Jake felt a deep sense of unease settle in his stomach. The weight of Lyra's words pressed down on him. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It wasn't just about the mark or the power he had inherited. It was about the kind of person he would become. He turned away from Lyra, his mind a whirlwind of conflicting thoughts. He wanted to believe in what she said, that he was meant for something greater, that he could be a protector. But deep down, he feared that he wasn't strong enough. He feared the power inside of him. Could he control it? Or would it control him? "I didn't ask for this," Jake muttered, his voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't ask to be part of this war." Lyra's voice softened, though it still carried the weight of centuries. No one asked for this, Jake, but fate doesn't care about what we want. You are part of something bigger now. And whether you like it or not, you will have to make a choice. Jake could feel his pulse quicken, the uncertainty swirling inside him. His hands clenched at his sides, and for a moment, he wanted to lash out at Lyra, at the world, at the strange power inside him. He had never felt so lost, so powerless in his entire life. But then, something shifted. Something inside him stirred, a deeper part of himself awakening, responding to the call of the mark. He felt a surge of energy deep in his chest, and for a moment, it was like his whole body came alive with purpose. His vision blurred, and he could feel a connection to something far beyond the apartment, beyond the city. The mark on his neck flared with intensity, and Jake suddenly knew he wasn't alone in this fight. The power was his, but it wasn't just for him. Lyra noticed the change in him, her eyes narrowing slightly as she took a step back. "You're beginning to understand, aren't you?" Jake's hands trembled, but the surge of energy felt different. Now, it didn't feel like something he had to fear. It felt like something he could use. It was a part of him, and whether he liked it or not, it was something he had to learn to control. "Maybe I am," Jake said, his voice setting as the energy inside him continued to grow. "But that doesn't mean I know how to." Lyra's lips curled into a slight smile. "You will. But first, you need to make a choice. Will you fight for your freedom? Or will you let the power consume you?" Jake looked down at his hands, still trembling, but now with purpose. The power inside him was his to control. But how far would he go to protect himself and others? The air in Jake's apartment felt thick with anticipation, the weight of his decision pressing down on him like an invisible force. Lyra stood in the center of the room, watching him carefully, as though waiting for something. The power inside him, the mark on his neck, and the strange connection he now had to her people. It was all coming to a head. Jake stood by the window, his hands clenched tightly into fists, staring out at the city skyline. The world outside looked unchanged, normal, but inside, everything had shifted. It felt like his entire life was now divided, before the mark and after. "Jake." Lyra's voice broke through his thoughts, soft yet commanding. "The time is almost here. You cannot hide from this any longer." He turned to face her, the weight of her words sinking in. "I'm not hiding," he said, his voice sharp. "But I don't know what to do with all this. I don't know what I'm supposed to be." Lyra's gaze softened, her eyes full of understanding. "You have the power to decide, Jake. That is both your gift and your curse." The words stung. But Jake didn't flinch. He had never asked for this, never wanted to be the key to some ancient war. Yet here he was, standing at the crossroads of destiny. His human side screamed for peace, for normality. But the alien blood running through his veins called for something more, something dangerous. "You say I can choose," Jake said, stepping closer to her. "But what happens if I choose wrong? What if I can't control this power inside me? What if it consumes me, just like they warned?" Lyra's expression hardened, her eyes gleaming with ancient wisdom. "The power will never consume you unless you allow it. It is not the power that will destroy you, it is your fear of it. Fear is the one thing that makes you weak, Jake. You must learn to embrace what you are, or you will lose everything." Jake clenched his fists tighter. The mark on his neck burned, and the pull of its power was almost overwhelming. He could feel it like an untamed force within him, just waiting to break free. But every instinct screamed at him to fight it, to stay in control, to hold on to what he was. But was that even possible? Suddenly, the air shifted again. The same chill from before, the one he had come to associate with danger, crept through the room. Jake's eyes darted toward the door. There was no mistaking it now. They had come, the alien faction. The ones who had been hunting him. They were here. Lyra turned to face the door, her body tensing as she prepared for the confrontation. It's time, Jake. They will try to take you. They will try to break you, but you must not let them. You must choose, will you stand with me, or will you surrender to them? Jake felt a surge of energy rise from deep within, as though the very walls around him had been cracked open. He could feel the power coursing through him, his senses heightened, the mark on his neck glowing brighter with each passing second. It was no longer just a symbol. It was a part of him. But then, a voice from the shadows called out, sharp and cold. Enough, Lyra. The boy belongs to us. A figure stepped forward, cloaked in darkness. Tall and imposing, its features were hidden by a dark hood, but Jake could feel the malevolent energy radiating from it. The alien faction leader. He had been the one who had sent the assassin to attack him earlier. The one who had tried to warn him that he wasn't Lyra's to control. You cannot protect him. Lyra, the leader said, its voice dripping with authority. The mark is not just a symbol of possession, it is a weapon. And now that it is awakened, it must be claimed. He is ours. Jake's heart pounded in his chest. The words echoed in his mind, the weight of the choice before him, crushing down like a stone. Could he stand against this alien force? Could he wield the power inside him to protect himself, to protect Lyra? Or would he fall to the faction's demands? Lyra stepped forward, her voice unwavering. You think you can take him, but you don't understand. He is not just a tool for your war. He is the future. The moment he was marked, he became part of something greater than your ambitions. The alien leader sneered. Then let us see how great he truly is. Before Jake could react, the air around them seemed to shimmer, and a force pushed against him, an invisible wave of energy, trying to knock him off balance. But then, something inside him snapped. The fear, the doubt, all the uncertainty he had been holding onto it all broke apart like shattered glass. The power surged through him, his hands crackling with energy as the mark on his neck blazed with light. Jake felt it, the connection to Lyra, to her people, to his ancient bloodline. He wasn't just part of this war, he was the war's key. No. Jake shouted, his voice a roar that echoed through the room. I will not be controlled, not by you, not by anyone. With a single motion, Jake raised his hands, and a wave of energy exploded from his body. The alien faction leader was thrown back, slamming into the walls with an impact that shook the entire building. Lyra watched in stunned silence, her eyes wide as Jake stood there, his energy still crackling around him. She had always known he had the potential, but this was more than she had ever expected. Jake turned to her, his chest heaving, the power still radiating from him. He could feel it all, his own strength, the bond with Lyra, the connection to the alien factions, and the war that was now his to fight. I am not afraid anymore, Jake said, his voice steady. I will fight for what's mine, for the future. Lyra's expression softened, and for the first time, there was something akin to pride in her eyes. You have made your choice, Jake, and now we fight. The room was silent, except for the crackling energy in the air. Jake had chosen his path. He had chosen to embrace the power inside him, to stand tall against the forces that sought to control him. And in that moment, Jake knew the battle had only just begun.